Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So before I get into this video, my dog is chilling here behind me. So if you see a strange figure popping out behind me, it's Jasper. He is just chilling. I thought I would film a kind of how to get a first in a research report. Specifically, I study psychology, so it's going to be focused on psychology, but I guess you could apply this to other subjects. I'm not 100% sure how other subjects lay them out, but I imagine it would be similar. I kind of feel like I've cracked the code. I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience of doing research reports before I then go into my tips. Me and one of my friends usually run, it got stopped because of COVID, but we usually run like a help session for all the first years doing the quantitative report, and I feel like it's really helped to solidify my understanding. So I do feel like hopefully I'll give you guys some tips that I know have helped some of them and hopefully will help you guys. So I'm a third year psychology student. Every single year we have to do a researching psychology module. So I've written in total 3 quantitative research reports. This is going to be focused on quantitative reports. So first year we did a report on, I've got my laptop with me to remind me, it was investigating differences in effective attraction before and after taking part in a consistent eye gaze task. It was like a t-test, it was like an experiment, and I got 73 in that. Honestly, reading this back now, I'm like, how on earth did I get 73? Like, it is shocking. Me, honestly, in my degree, I look at 80 as though it's 100. Like, we've literally been told before that it's basically impossible to get over 80. It's so frustrating, but that's just the way it is. And the one I did last year, we had to make up our own study. It was like a questionnaire study, and my group did a correlational study, and I got 80 in that one, which I was over the moon with. And then the one we did this year was effect of low and high male facial attraction and induced positive, neutral and negative emotion on females' dateability ratings in an online dating setting. Sorry for all the looking down. It was a 2x3 mixed ANOVA design, and for that one I got 79, which I was also absolutely over the moon about. I put much less effort into this one than I did the one I got 80 on, but basically, all in all, I think I've cracked the code. So I thought if I can give any advice to help anyone else, then why not? So yeah, I'm gonna kind of go through section by section and kind of things I've picked up along the way. Just remember though, you know, I'm not a lecturer, I'm not an expert, I'm just giving you my tips. So we're gonna start off with the abstract, something which I usually always get pretty good comments on, and just kind of go over my tips. The first thing obviously is just be as concise as possible. Abstracts are about what, 200 to 300 words. It's really not a lot, and the way I kind of do it is I make sure that I've got a little bit of background in there, what your study was then doing, and how it did it. So a tiny little bit about the methods, like, I don't know, we used a 2x3 mixed ANOVA design, that this is the independent variable, blah blah, this is what we measured. Nothing in depth. How many participants you had, that kind of thing. What your results were. If there's a significant result, I just kind of say this was significant, none of the others were. Kind of what it means. A little bit of points for discussion, maybe why your other results weren't significant. Honestly, just something a little bit descriptive. And then I always end my abstract off with future directions could do this. So essentially just go through each section and think what is really important that someone reading an abstract would need to know for this, and then come back and mould it around that. Abstracts are difficult, I'm not gonna lie. I think it takes a while to really know what should be included and what shouldn't. But yeah, so moving on to the introduction. First tip, read a lot. I would say that overall anyway, but a lot of parts of research reports, it's not really too essential to read loads. But for your introduction and discussion, read a lot. Think you have enough and read more. Sometimes I worry I read too much, but I think it's better to read too much than too little. It's good to have an overall understanding. Make sure before you start writing your introduction that you fully understand everything that you're about to put in. Something that I quite like to do is, if I've read a few papers on a similar point, I will kind of put in one sentence of maybe like multiple studies have found XYZ, and then open your brackets and do like multiple citations in one. And I just feel like that really helps to condense it, save on words, but also show that you've read a lot of literature around this one thing, which I think is always a really good thing. The way I split my intro up is usually, I mean, all lecturers say this, use the funnel technique. So for example, I'm gonna just have a look at the one that I just wrote and how I split it up. So it was on male facial attraction, induced emotion, and then the dependent variable was female dateability ratings, and it was in an online dating setting. So in my first paragraph, I defined emotion and kind of just set the scene for the study. I then showed how emotions can prime judgments, because obviously in this study we were looking at if they could prime dateability ratings, so I had a paragraph about that. I then spoke about how attractiveness influences dating decisions, because that was another one of our independent variables, attractiveness. I then spoke about online dating apps and that they're expanding, etc., because that was kind of the realm that our study was set within. And then I had one study tying everything together, showing the gaps in the literature, and then ending in kind of the aims and the hypotheses of the paper. So yeah, just that funnel, make sure that you've included everything, make sure you've defined everything. If you have quite a lengthy research title, make sure that, you know, everything's been defined and everything's been explained pretty well. Think about your hypotheses. I know that a lot of lecturers say that you can make it kind of non-directional and not say how you know, expect it to go, which is fine, right? And I'm not saying don't do that. If you really don't know what direction your hypotheses would go in, then don't. But I always make them directional, because I mean, I might be totally wrong with saying this, but just to me, I feel like it shows that I've read a lot to be able to come to like an inkling of the way that I think the results are going to go. It's always been comments that have come up about how, you know, I've made an argument, so my hypotheses reflect that. I just think it's always worked for me. So, but if it's something where you actually have no idea, don't just put it directional for the sake of it. But if you've been reading and you do think of a direction, I'd always make them directional. So yeah, that would be my tips for the introduction section. Moving on to the methods section, where honestly I don't have that many tips, because I feel like writing the methods section is very easy. You just follow what you've been told to put in. I will give some tiny tips, I guess. So with the methods section, keep it concise. We usually don't have many words for it. It doesn't have to be lengthy. And honestly, there's not really any describing really to be done there. It's just telling the reader what you did, how you did it, etc. So yeah, just don't stress too much about it. For the participants section, I always include the ages, how many. This feels like it's quite like obvious things, I don't know. Design, you can really condense it down into one sentence. Here's an example from my bit of work. A two-way two bracket attraction, colon, attractive or unattractive, close bracket. So a two-way two, then stated my two levels of the independent variable, times 3 bracket emotion in terms of valence, colon, positive, neutral, negative. So the next independent variable, it's 3 levels. Mixed ANOVA was used, attraction was within subjects and emotion was between subjects, because it was a mixed design, so I've stated that. The dependent variable was dateability. And I just found that a very easy condensed way of writing it. Write it out like it's a sum. Don't get too bogged down with describing everything. You just want to think, what's the most concise way that I can portray this to the reader? So yes, and always kind of say what kind of statistical analysis type study it is. So like I mentioned that it was ANOVA. If it was a t-test, you put t-test, correlational, regression analysis, whatever it is, always put that there. So moving on to materials, this kind of differs depending on what study you're doing. So basically just everything that you're using, make sure that you've stated, you've put, this is how to find it in the appendices. If it's something like a generic questionnaire, make sure you've cited it. Generic pictures, make sure you've cited them. Just tiny little things that is very good to say, this is where I got it from, if it wasn't originally from you. I'm just trying to look back. For my questionnaire report, I spoke a lot about how I developed the questions, the literature that I read in order to develop them, how many questions I had, why, examples from the questionnaire as well. If you are using a questionnaire type scale, make sure you say what kind of scale it is. So I often use Likert scales. Say it's a Likert scale and then cite Likert. That's something that I always do, that I think is good to do. So moving on to the procedure, honestly just step by step. What I always do is imagine that I am a participant. Imagine I did my study. What did I go through? Write it down, condense it. Yeah, just everything that you went through, and then at the end you could say, and then this data was compiled and analysed in SPSS, for example. I don't know. Okay, moving on to the results section. This is a section where I always feel like I want a bit of guidance for, and I feel like I've picked up a lot of tips and a lot of tricks on how to really do well in the results section. So first of all, I always have a paragraph with the descriptive statistics. To avoid having to explain them all, use a table. If you're not using a table with your descriptives, you're wasting so many words. And when you use a table, make sure it is in APA format. That's something I always do. I'm so precise, making sure everything is exactly in the APA format. Remember, it's updated to APA 7th pretty recently. It's not APA 6th anymore, and there are a couple of minor differences to tables and figures. But yeah, include a table, refer to your table, because that won't eat up your word count. And the descriptives is pretty easy. You're just kind of describing trends. So maybe I always look at the standard deviation, talk about what that means, just to show you understand these things. If it was non-parametric, you might want to use medians, and just I guess some quick things if you don't know how to do tables in APA style. Keep horizontal lines to a minimum. You need about 2 at the top, 1 at the bottom, no more. Make sure that it's called a table. Make sure that at the bottom you have a note to describe what each thing in the table means. So by that I mean, if you've done mean, for example, and you've just wrote M in the note at the bottom, make sure you show what M actually means. Yeah, but I don't really want to go into that because that's the kind of thing that you can find on YouTube so easily. So yeah, if you're gonna have tables and figures, look for YouTube videos. It's like that kind of thing where it's so easy to get good marks for doing it precisely, and it's not difficult to do. It's just a bit like annoying to find out how to structure them. But if you follow a YouTube video, that's all I've ever done, is followed YouTube videos, and they've always worked fine. For figures, I would always include them. Our lecturer that we had for this term said that adding in figures doesn't do anything to your mark. A lecturer I had the term before, I know that they liked us to include them, so I think it depends on your lecturer, but I would always include them. Even if they say it doesn't impact your mark, I just think if they're reading through a research report and they have something visual to see the results, they're gonna think, oh well, that's good, I've got something visual. And even if it maybe that doesn't impact your result, the overall look of your report is going to look a bit more professional, put together. So if you've used like t-tests or ANOVA, I'd use bar charts. If you've done a correlation, I'd use a line graph. Again, just follow a YouTube video. They're not hard to do. You can do them in Excel. One thing that's changed with APA 7th is, I'm pretty sure the title of figures used to be at the bottom, but now it's changed to the top, just like tables. So if you're going to use them and you're used to APA 6th, remember that. Another thing that I always include if you're going to do bar graphs is, if you're working with means, include the standard error of the mean. It's just a little thing to show you've thought about it. It's important in terms of understanding the statistics as well. Sorry if anything has changed majorly. I had to charge my camera battery because it died and I'm worried it's going to die again. So yeah, try not to be too long. I don't remember what I was saying. I think I was on about standard error bars maybe. Basically just jazzing things up, like jazzing your figures up. Even in my first year report I had standard error bars, which, reading the quality of it, I'm like, I don't know how first year me thought to include standard error bars, to be honest, but I don't think I would have known what they were in first year. Yeah, it's never too early to try and add in things. Like, I think one thing a lot of people do is, as soon as a lecturer says you don't need to include this, they don't include it. But if you include the things that they say you don't need, it's focusing on that jacket behind me, sorry. Yeah, if you include the things that they say you don't even need this, you're going to get brownie points. That's just been my experience anyway. I've always gone one step further. Like, it's not easy to get a first. It really isn't. You do have to try and go above and beyond. I always think, what can I do that other people maybe won't have thought to do? This is in a report. In an essay it's a bit different because it's kind of your writing style and your ability to argue and things, but I feel in a report, like for example with stats, what other tests could you run, or what other things could you explain that maybe not everyone else will have explained but will show your depth of understanding? So for example, in our questionnaire report that we did last year, I did Cronbach's Alpha. I can't pronounce that, but basically it's like a test to look at the reliability of your scales within a questionnaire. Something that we weren't taught, but I thought I need to add something in that's gonna kind of give me that edge. And it wasn't difficult to do, it was easy to understand. I just followed YouTube videos. Similarly, in the report that I just did, we had to report effect size, and I thought, well, why don't I interpret it, not just report it? So I used Cohen's guidelines to analyse the effect sizes, and then I elaborated, I showed what it meant while adhering to Cohen's guidelines. But yeah, I don't know, I'm just trying to say that there's always that one step further you can go, put you on the edge of getting a first, because firsts are not easy to get. Like, I don't do this by ease, I have to put a lot of work in. Every subject is different, every uni is different, but I find it difficult, I find it stressful. You know, I don't love going out and thinking, what other statistical tests can I do? Because it's easy to think, but you haven't been told to do it, so why would you do it? Which I think every lecturer's viewpoint might be differently, but it's always worked for me, thinking what little extra thing can I do, what extra little thing can I explain in my results section. So yeah, just include figures, include tables, and if you can, include extra statistical tests, or not even extra tests, just elaborating on your results that bit more to show your depth of understanding, because they're looking to know that you have a really well developed depth of understanding of the stats that you've done. And yeah, obviously just how I write the results, I do a descriptive statistics, then why I carried out the statistics I did. So make sure you check if you need to do parametric or non-parametric. I had a massive paragraph on stating why I still ran a parametric test even though my data was technically non-parametric, and again I got really good comments for that because it showed I engaged with the literature and understood. And then I split it up by each hypothesis, obviously, in a different paragraph. So yeah, that would be my results tips. Moving on to the discussion, again, just read lots. You want to show that you really understood your results. So the way I split it up is each hypothesis goes in a different paragraph. I explain what the results actually mean. You've got to show you understand the numbers. Then I kind of will take a minute to think, well, why could the results have been this way? Explain that. Why didn't they go the other way? Explain that. And just kind of follow that kind of way of doing things. And then I do a separate paragraph which includes limitations. So this could be, I know with the questionnaire report, I spoke about limitations with the internal consistency of the scales, but more often than not it's going to be limitations with your experimental design. My top tip here would be, do not mention you had a small sample size, and do not mention sex differences within your sample, because that is so general. It does not show a marker that you have deep understanding of your design. Like, you could give that criticism to any design. Again, you want to be thinking, how can I go above and beyond and mention something that maybe other people haven't thought of, that shows that I've engaged with a lot of the literature and really have quite specific critiques of your experiment. It's very easy to do. My tips would be to just look at other experiments that were similar to yours and see kind of the limitations that they've given, and often that can kind of trigger in your brain, oh, maybe this could be a limitation to mine, or just theories that you've read that you think could incorporate a limitation to yours. It's not difficult to do, but it just takes a tiny bit more effort than just going, oh, I'll just put in about the sample size, because I hear so many people doing that and I'm like, no, like, but yeah, just be a bit creative with it, I would say. And then I have a paragraph where I conclude. So overall tips, I don't know if I'm going to get this filmed before the camera dies, but I'll try. Read a lot. Don't be concerned if you think you're reading too much. You're not. Just then don't use so many sources that they'll say you've not really done them justice. So read a lot but don't always use as much as you read. Make sure you have a really detailed and well developed plan before you start writing it. It makes it so much easier. Oh yeah, use books. Use books. I bought this book, which was a real help. How to design and report experiments. It helped me. And then for the actual statistics, this is our course textbook, Research Methods and Statistics in Psychology. Just very easy way of explaining things, makes it a lot easier. As well, YouTube videos. I use YouTube videos all the time to help me. I know it's probably not the best way, but for running statistical tests, how to make tables and figures, they can be really helpful. Another thing, look at other people's research reports. So one thing that I always do is I go on Google Scholar and I'll just put in 2 times 3 makes ANOVA, and I'll read an academic article that has used the same design as mine and see how they've structured things. And I do this for a few until I kind of start to realise, well, they've done it and they've got it published, so if I do something similar to them, then I know I'm on the right lines. Referencing. Make sure your referencing is perfect. Easy way to get marks. And just things to do with formatting. Numbers, there's rules for numbers in APA. Can't remember off the top of my head, but make sure you check that, because it's another easy way to just make it all look neat and show you've adhered to the guidelines. If you have any other videos that you'd like me to film or any questions or anything at all, then please don't hesitate to leave them down below. I'd love to try and be of any help if I can, but please do remember, I'm just a student giving my tips. I'm not a lecturer, so don't take everything I say kind of down to the last minute. But I've done well so far, so I think I've cracked the code with research reports. I'm gonna have to end this video because my camera is flashing. I'm really sorry, but that's everything I had to say. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.